Welcome to the Robert Hunt Financial Market Update. It's your host, Robert Hunt, where I look at the week's financial news that can be a bit confusing, misleading, and take us off course to make it actionable, understandable, and clear. What a week, and therefore, what a show. We're looking at the Chicago Pension Fund. How bad is it? Are they listening to my podcast at all? We then delve into Robert's Corner, where we're going to look at artificial intelligence. How can I use it today? How is Robert Hunt using it today? What can we learn? And then we look at the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, $2 trillion with a T. And before we get in, special thanks to contributor Case Kilgore for submitting a voluminous amount of excellent data. If you see him at the watering hole or your church, give him a special thanks for being a contributor to this episode. He can expect the royalty checks from this episode to be sent to his home. Buckle up. Let's talk Chicago pension. You may have heard about how bad the state of affairs is with the Chicago Pension Fund, or you may not have. I'll give you a quick primer. This is a citythatworks.substack.com. So we're not in the Wall Street Journal. We're not in the Dallas Morning News. We're with the People's Choice Substack. Listen to this. If you think your own municipality's finances are upside down, it is no fun in Chicago. Chicago ended the year at $12.42 billion in assets against $48.95 billion in liabilities. That is a 25.4% funded rate. Ain't great. And a $36.53 billion net liability. Now this gentleman said, we're making progress. That's how bad it is. Chicago, like many municipalities, has a pension fund for workers. Municipal, labor, police. These funds are for the benefit. Fire as well. And they're invested. And they are billions and billions of dollars. Now, wouldn't you just wonder, how do they invest this money? Are they listening to this podcast? Well, if they are listening to the podcast, they're not implementing the advice I'm giving. How many funds do you think Chicago uses across its pension funds in order to invest? Go ahead and write it down. Think to yourself, how many different funds? If you guessed 80, you were correct. 80 different funds to lag the market. If you're wondering what the cost of those 80 funds are, wonder no longer, $30 to $40 million a year. Again, 30 to 40 million, that's an M, $1 million a year. That's a lot of Toyota Corollas. That's a lot of Chipotle. That's a lot of, most importantly, funding back into these pensions so that the pensioner, Chicago employee, former employee, can benefit. And what did they get for that 30 to 40 million bucks a year? You'd think something pretty good. If you spend 30 to 40 million, you better get something good. You know what they got? Mediocrity. That's right. In investing, it only gets worse the more you spend. It's almost kind of true in cars, but there's diminishing marginal utility. But they spend that money to do what? Well, I never thought you'd ask. To lag the 50-50. So this gentleman on citythatworks.substack.com, he said, you know what? I'm going to compare municipal, police, fire, and labor against the index fund. He devised the index of 50% bonds, 50% index US, Vanguard. 50-50. Not an aggressive deal. 50-50. Super simple, super cheap. No managers. You're clicking a button. Well, do you know what happens? Last year, the returns for municipal, police, fire, and labor, 9.9, 10.7, 8.5, and 9. Oh, that doesn't sound so bad, Robert. I'll read them again. 9.9, 10.7, 8.5, 9. Well, that's just not so bad. Well, what if we did the 50-50 index, essentially free? They returned 12.5. All the hand-wringing, all the meetings, all the free Chicago Bulls and Blackhawks tickets and steak dinners so that you could invest in these people's funds, all so you can lag the market. And not by a little, by a lot. And for those of you who might just have this thinking in your head, what if it's just 1 year? It was a bad year for the active folks. We both know what the SPIVA report says, SPIVA, but if you don't, go look it up. Don't even look it up. Let the AI agent look it up for you. He went back to 2013 and tracked these funds, municipal, police, fire, and labor, and they all lag the index. And you're paying buckets of money, bushels of money, putting it into a furnace. And why, you may ask, well, why would any municipality ever agree to this terrible arrangement? The data is so clear. Surely these pension board members can read this data and just pull the plug, pull the parachute. The state of Nevada did it. The state of Nevada, one of my favorite states, the manner in which they manage money. They have one guy in an office, makes $120K a year, and he says no to everybody. Receives mail. You can pitch him all you want. He will take none of your gifts. Nothing. And he will continue to recommend to the state, do index funds. Nothing new has changed. And he trounces the competition, smokes them out the gym. Why is it the state of Nevada got religion and the city of Chicago hasn't? Oh, there are a multitude of answers. I've got my own theories. Warren Buffett, as you'll recall, if you're a continuous listener from the inception of this podcast, went on a tour of the country, went to all these various endowment funds and pension funds, begging them just to index. Just do it, index. What did Buffett say happened? After the pitch, they all smiled and thanked him and appreciated his time and thought the data was compelling, and then went off to their consultants. And you know what the consultants said? After charging them $300, $400, $500 for their consultative services, they then advocated a 80 fund plan. Complexity out the wazoo. Because you can't charge someone $400K a year and tell them to put your money in indexes. You can only charge them that if you've got a carousel of funds you're rotating in and out of, predicting macroeconomic forces and special funds that no one's heard of, and that's the only way you can. So the alignment's not there. There's so many conflicts that exist. So for Chicago, if you're listening, I hope you are, afuera. Imitate the Argentinian president who says afuera every little program. If you'll recall, he just says afuera, afuera, afuera. Do that with your funds. Sell them all. Index it all. Your yearly meeting, which should take no more than 10 minutes, is, do we like the way we've invested? Should we continue for the coming year? Our costs are virtually zero. They historically were $40 million. Are we feeling good about that? We are. Carry on. As it stands, they have 80 different fund managers. That means there's always churn. You're always hiring and firing, and you have to have managers for your managers, and it never ends. So let's learn a lesson from them. And it was put to me, hey, what would you do? I would index. I wouldn't think twice. Index, index, index. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. Let's give the update, the manner in which I'm using it today. One area where it has improved demonstrably over the past 6 months is scenarios. If I give it a scenario, so this is a great deal of what my work is filled with. Hey, should I buy this house? Can I make this move? Whatever. Can I change my job? And will it be a good move for me? Well, you can ask the artificial intelligence agent that, ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, and it's gotten pretty good. So I now will, mid-meeting, if someone says, hey, should I buy this house in this state? As they're talking, I'm typing, and I'm putting it into the AI agent. ChatGPT, I've learned, is the best at this. Gemini's pretty good. And it'll spit out an answer. And if I ask it to send it to a Google Sheet or Excel, it'll do that for me. And the client will have the spreadsheet the next day or that night on the work, but I'll give them the answer. That's pretty good. Used to have to go back to your Zillow calculator and what's the property tax regime in that state? If it's what about the city? Well, the AI agent does all that in about 8 seconds. And if you're not sure, Gemini gave me an answer and it got the right answer, but the work it showed wasn't correct. Just ask another agent. You can have 3 or 4 different agents and see if their answer is correct. It really speeds things up. And what I like a lot about it is you can focus on I'll call it the advisor alpha, which is the behavioral, psychological, how are we actually going to implement this plan? The answer, the math, is actually getting pretty easy. I'm not going to say it's solved because it still can trip up. It's rare, but it can. But I think if you're just careful about using other agents to check other agents, you're pretty safe. They would all have to hallucinate simultaneously, which doesn't happen. So that's exciting. I would encourage you, even if you're not a computer person, you don't like it, try it out. Give it questions. See what it can do for you. I've had clients upload their portfolios and ask, hey, what do you think? And one of them said, hey, what do you think? And give it to me in poem form or something. It has an opportunity to really accelerate the financial advice giving and help focus on what matters. And guess who else is using this artificial intelligence? Norway, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, 2 trillion with a T, largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. They have a lot of oil and gas reserves and not a very big country. So pretty cool. They invest on the Norwegian people's behalf. And they are using AI like crazy. And it's interesting how they're using it. I'd say they kind of listen to this podcast. Proverbially, of course, they probably don't. But their philosophy, I would run it differently, but it's not just terrible. What I find most interesting is the way they've aggressively used AI. So, again, benefit of Mr. Kilgore, thank you. They took this $2 trillion fund and ran a 12-month AI experiment. They used Claude, which I don't actually use, but it's working for them. And it was fascinating. What they are stock pickers, active managers, and but they try to hold things for a long time. So they try to keep their time horizon long, but they're in the active game and feel they can be. And I'd say they actually provide a societal benefit in that they actually vote their shares. So instead of letting Vanguard vote the shares or some intermediary, they're voting the shares. And they used to have humans do this, but now they're having the AI read the executive compensation plans and then vote for them. And it's working. They're also having AI review earnings reports and analysis, and then saying whether they think something is under or overvalued, which you and I both know the answer to that. It's appropriately valued, but they're doing us a great service. Index fund investor, the market's only getting more efficient by players like this, especially large players like this, implementing these strategies. And so they have an interesting, they have a 670 person team. They saved 213 hours in a year. $100 million in savings cost. They estimated 95% accuracy in these voting decisions, which helps you and me a lot. And they had 49 million transactions optimized globally. What does that mean? They also use this to ensure that their stock pickers and investment managers weren't using the data incorrectly, and a lot of times they were. The AI would look over their shoulder and say, no, you're not actually taking this data and using it appropriately. Wowzers. So it's helping human decision making. If it's, so interesting, fascinating. You and I don't have to do that. But what I find most applicable to you and I is that the index fund game, and again, if you put me in charge of the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund for a day, boy, would that be fun. I would clear the decks. We'd be all index. I'd probably run an analysis on whether I could index myself more cost effectively than using an intermediary like Vanguard, because I probably would see the value in voting the shares if I had 2 trillion with a T. Someone tries to pull some crazy executive compensation plan. As an example, Norway rejected Elon Musk's plan. Not saying that was crazy, but their finger is on the dial on those things. And so you really get to be on the front lines. I think there's a great benefit to that. I would just go all index, and I might build it myself. Again, that's a big might, because the simplicity is for a country. We could take our 670 person team and maybe take it to 67 people, because I'm sure there's a bunch of administrative stuff you still got to do even if you index everything. Maybe you can take it lower. My suspicion is the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund would probably outperform just about every sovereign wealth fund, even at their size, especially at their size, by indexing. So good news for you, the individual investor. We can use AI to ask it questions. Am I optimized? Am I doing the right thing here? Can I buy this house? Am I budgeting correctly? You can feed it data. It'll tell you what to do. I also think, and this is what's great, it does give the right answer. The AI, if you ask it, hey, should I do this active fund or a low-cost plan? Should I do something complex or simple? It's pulling in all this data, and it's accurately answering. The AI is telling us to keep our costs low, our investing simple, and our time horizon long, because that's what's going to give us the best shot on our investing journey. See you in 2 weeks.